Hello everybody, Jason of New Age Revolution Cave for a beautiful Sunday afternoon. Not beautiful at all, it's raining out and it's about 48 degrees, which I think is actually beautiful. I'm fine with that kind of temperature, especially in October, especially a few days away from November. I'm okay with cold. It's kind of the way the world was supposed to be. Whatever. It's the Power Hour. It's the Power Hour, part of the greatest, hardest-hitting double header in YouTube history. Sundays on the New 80s Revolution, we get the Power Hour and Wrestling with the Past. Whew, two blockbusters in one day. Before that, a couple of announcements. First of all, I want to say a very special thank you to the Stotler Man. He is Stotler Man on the channel. He completely unexpected, unannounced, sent me a Barry Windham and Mike Rotundo autographed photo. And you do know that this is one of my favorite tag teams. And then a Barry Windham as the short-lived NWA World Champion during a very interesting time in WCW/NWA history. But I just love this. Love it. And I got to figure out a way to incorporate these into the LJN wall. Even if I have to put them behind the figures, I still think they'll show kind of. But big thank you to Stotler Man, for sending those. Another pre-show update. Here we are tailgating. Tailgating before the big show. When I got the Facebook page back up and running, I started getting the idea of doing some interviews again, some shoot interviews, if you will. And, because guys are everywhere. You can find people everywhere. You can find people everywhere. There's no other way to say it. We're not hidden anymore. You have access to people that you never had access before, to. And so I thought, I loved doing the interview with Magnum TA. I loved doing the interview with Greg Gagne. Let's keep going. Let's pursue. And so I Facebook messaged a couple of people, and one has gotten back to me and the other one has not. And I don't even think he's read the message. So when you send a message to somebody who's not your friend, it kind of sits hidden for a little while in message requests. And I bet that these people get lots of message requests. So eventually he'll get around to it, maybe, or maybe I'll send him a friend request and see if we can do it that way. But the person that has said, sure, let's do it. We've got to work out a day and time. So I've got to put together some questions, and I want to do it in my style, a style coming from a fan, a style coming from a mark even. I don't want to know, how did somebody slip somebody a blade? I don't want to know that. That's been done to death. I want to know about the experiences, about the fun, about how a person felt being in this business. So coming in November, if we can work out all the details, I'll be interviewing former ring announcer for very early WWF and a lot of WCW, especially Clash of the Champions, Gary Michael Capetta, folks. Former WWF, former NWA, WCW ring announcer, Gary Michael Capetta. We will hopefully have an interview with in November. And I'm excited about that. If we can get all the particulars to work out, it'll be on Zoom, just like Magnum and Greg Gagne were on Zoom. And maybe we'll add that to the repertoire of my countless talents. Let's do the Power Hour, folks, where you, the most important part of the channel, get to ask your questions, get to have your name mentioned in front of millions and millions and really hundreds of people. Your names, right? That's huge. It's huge. We're still working off some of Upstate Johnny's questions. If you want to be a part of the big show, part of the Power Hour, you simply send me an email to multiple different locations. jasonnup76@gmail.com, TN80sR questions@gmail.com, or hit me up on the Facebook. Send a friend request to old Jason Nupp and we'll be friends, and you can ask me questions that way. Upstate Johnny says, who's your favorite Intercontinental Champion? That's fine. That's a good question. I know my man D-Mod wants me to answer that a certain way, but I'm going to answer it, my way. The Intercontinental belt was so special to me in '84 because that's when I discovered wrestling. And I started watching wrestling, it seems, in the middle of the Tito Santana-Greg Valentine feud. That's when I started watching. So that green, old style, when I say old style, back in the early 80s, like 80, 82, 83, wrestling belts were a lot of them were made by trophy makers, and you just had these smaller, bulky plates. Some of them were like 3D. Some of the old tag team titles had a big eagle sticking up on the belt, and they were made by trophy makers instead of the belt makers today. And that green Intercontinental title that Greg Valentine and Tito Santana wore is one of my favorite belts, and I'd love to get a replica of it someday. But favorite Intercontinental Champion, it's definitely a toss-up between Tito and Greg. Just because of my not so pleasant experience with Tito Santana, I'm going to go with Greg Valentine as my favorite Intercontinental Champion. I think he's a fantastic wrestler. I love bad guy champions. I love watching the good guys chase the bad guys. Hogan as champion, he wasn't going to lose. Greg Valentine as champion, he could lose to Junkyard Dog. If Junkyard Dog beats, I don't know. I mean, I don't want to spoil it. We could be surprised. If Junkyard Dog beats Greg Valentine at WrestleMania 1, I'm not going to be surprised. We'll be watching that soon. I'm not going to be surprised. So I'm going to say Greg Valentine. I think he's so representative of our early, of my childhood memories with wrestling. In 1984, wrestling is Greg Valentine. It's Tito Santana. It's Sheik and Volkov. It's Hogan. It's Stud. It's guys like that. It's like the first two series of LJNs. So we're going to say Greg Valentine on that one. Least favorite heel wrestler of all time, excluding Piper. So the bad guy that I hated the most. Now, I can't say that I can't even say Piper's not my favorite bad guy. I think Piper's a fantastic bad guy. I always had a problem with Piper being regarded as like the promo king. I just thought that was like not even close. His interviews, his talking was garbage to me. That's a little bit of an exaggeration. I think Piper's one of the greatest bad guys of all time, if not the greatest bad guy of all time. But I just don't like when people say he's like the best interview of all time or the best promo of all time. I don't think so. But there are other bad guys that I can't stand. Superstar Billy Graham. Superstar Billy Graham is a bad guy. I just couldn't stand. I couldn't stand him as a good guy either. I hated his ring work. I hated and then you read about who he became later on in life and all that. But Superstar Billy Graham is probably one of my least favorite bad guy wrestlers. He wasn't a bad guy, but Boogie Woogie Man Jimmy Valiant I couldn't stand. Abdullah the Butcher I think is horrible. Yeah, but Superstar Billy Graham's right up there as one of my most hated wrestlers. I'm trying to look at the wall to see if anybody else stands out. I mean, it's sad for me to say, but I didn't like Captain Lou at all. I thought he was just awful, incoherent. Johnny V is terrible as a manager, as a heel manager, just awful. All right, well, that's it for Upstate Johnny. He's got a bunch more questions, but he always asks me questions that I have to think about. So we'll get back to Upstate Johnny. So we started with two easy ones. You want to go hardcore now? You want to go hardcore? Huh? You want to challenge me with some of your hardcore questions? Not yet. Lisa E. And there have been many others who've asked questions too. We got to get to those. We're just finishing up a couple of the first ones. Lisa E wants to know, have the bushes grown over the new fence in the backyard? No, they haven't. But so I closed off my yard. I lost about 3 feet of yard because I built a fence, because we had the back of our yard has a fence. It's the school fence. So there's a school fence because we live up against a school. There's a school fence, a chain link, and then there was a stockade fence that I put up, a dog-eared fence that we put up, and then there was yard. But the 3 feet of where the fence is just all weeds, and it's just overgrowth, and it's terrible. And I just hated looking at it. And yes, of course, I could have cut up the weeds every year, but I didn't want to. I don't want to go back there and weed every single year. And no, the weed killer doesn't work. These are super weeds. These are angry, subhuman weeds from another planet. So I'm not going to go. Now they're just huge and they're prickery and you can't. So it looked awful. So I put up another fence. I blocked off that area. So we actually have 3 fences in the back of our yard right now. And no, they have not grown up. You can see the tops of the trees because there was a bunch of like arborvitaes back there. You can see the tops of the trees, and you can see some vines. There's some vines, and that'll be fine. If vines grow over the back of that fence, that'll be fine. But no, the weeds have not come up that high yet. And I did throw some plywood back there when I was building the fence. I took the door down from the sump pump room. And then I think I had some bigger pieces of plywood. I did throw those down back there in between the trees, and it knocked some of the weeds down. So now there's just ply, and when the plywood rots, I guess the leaves will come back. But it's really just a very interesting terrain back there. If you look over the fence, it's gross. But no, they have not grown over the fence yet. Are you going to dress up for Halloween? If you do, what or who will you be and why? Do you hand out candy? How do you decorate? Let's go through the first one. Am I going to dress up for Halloween? There's no plan as of right now, and Halloween is Tuesday. I still have the Gremlins costume in the back there, so I might wear that. Remember last year I wore the Gremlins 80s style costume. The Spirit Store had put out adult sized kid costumes. And I bought the Gremlins one with the mask that cuts into your face. It really does cut into your face, by the way. It was awful last year. And then you just have that strip of plastic that you wear. I might be a Gremlin again. They didn't put a new line out this year. Spirit Store didn't have the new adult kid costume. So if I do, it'll be that. Likely not. I probably won't, because my kids might have their friends go trick-or-treating with them, and I might just have to walk with the dad. So I probably won't. Do you hand out candy? Yeah, we do, but after we come home. So, the early kids will come, and they'll get some candy. Then we'll leave and we'll close up the house, and we'll be out for a while, and then we'll come home. And if there's some stragglers, the 9 o'clock high school kids that aren't dressed at all, they'll probably get the rest. But we used to, when the kids would only go trick-or-treating for an hour, we'd hand out candy. But now we're out. We're out for most of the night, but we do have candy in case they come. Do you decorate? I think that's what I cut off with my printing. Yeah, we decorate. I have a blow up. I have 3 blow ups in the front yard. We have a Michael Myers blow up. Walmart had licensed blow-ups this year. They had Chucky. I couldn't find a Chucky. They got Hocus Pocus. Then they had the Michael Myers and the thing from Stranger Things, the Demigorg or whatever it's called. So I got the Michael Myers, so that's in our front yard. And then we have a long Happy Halloween blow-up. And then we have a shark that's eating a guy. That's pretty cool. and it's mechanized, so it kind of like it turns a little bit and eyes light up, so that's cool. That's about it. Indoors, the kids have all their, there's a ton of Halloween stuff out that is actually coming down today. All the Halloween stuff is packed away today, so that in literally 2 days we can start putting up Christmas stuff. That's how we do. Christmas tree goes up Halloween night. When's our next field trip? We already took one to the Frightmare in the Falls. All right, that's it for the softballs. Lisa says, you mentioned you homeschool. Do you buy curriculum, or are they enrolled in a program like K through 12? Do you have an opinion on the K through 12? I think it says, do you have an opinion on the K through 12 curriculum? So let's talk about homeschooling. We'll get some hardball stuff. We have a curriculum. And we buy it every year. So there's a curriculum. New York State is one of the states that's heavily involved in homeschooling. And it's probably about one of 10 states, I'd say. One of 10 states. And that's involved. Other states are like, meh, do what you want. New York State almost wants the kids to follow a New York State curriculum to a degree. So we have to report to the state every year about progress. Now they don't, we can pretty much write whatever we want. They're not gonna come knocking on our door. However, every 2 years, starting in fifth grade, every other year, the kids have to test on an internet, on a online test. They have to test in math. They have to test in English. That's it. They're not testing in science. They're not testing in social studies. They have to test in math. They have to test in language. So, writing skills, spelling skills, punctuation skills, and math. That's it. Those are the only two. So Liam took the test last year for the first time and was in like the super high percentile, not because he's a genius, because we sat with him and like sort of talked through the test with him and, are you sure about that answer? And it's all like, I am going to the party or I are going to the party. And he's like, am? We're like, yeah, okay, cool. So, and then there was some things on the test that he hadn't even been taught, some weird things that, so he, we let him answer wrong some of the questions. If he got them wrong, he got them wrong, but he did fine. So yes, we have a curriculum as far as what classes to teach, but we can go buy our own product. So it's not easy. It's not easy to find a product that works. So, for example, I'm his math, science, health, and English teacher. His English program is called Essentials in Writing. So it's basically writing. His mother does, history of some kind, spelling, reading. Math is fine. Math you have to teach. His math program comes with a DVD and instruction, but it's new math. It's Common Core math, and I hate it. It's garbage. Burn it, throw it out, step on it, do whatever you want, get rid of it. So he's learning decimals this year. Now it's my responsibility to take the textbook, look at the chapter, multiplying decimals. Okay, I'm going to teach him the standard way of how to multiply decimals. You multiply the numbers like you always have, then you count the places, how many decimals, how many numbers after the decimal point for problem, number one, how many numbers past the decimal point for number two, add those up, move your decimal point over that many spaces. Common Core tells him to estimate, tells him to round up, tells him to do all this crap that I'm not going to do. So, you get the book and then you tailor the learning. All right. We got his science book and it was absolutely over everybody's head. It was unnecessary plant stuff, like plants. It was just insane, ridiculous. This is a waste of time. He doesn't care about this. He doesn't even care about it enough to learn it. It's not fun. It's just over the top, hardcore stuff for a 6th grader. So we closed that book. We got the health book. And now he's learning about calories, and he's learning about nutrition, and he's learning about drugs and alcohol, and he's learning about where babies come from, and he's learning about what happens during puberty and all that stuff. Now that's going to be half the semester. We're going to finish that book quick. Then we're going to go on and we're going to pick science topics. So he might want to learn about a particular animal. He might want to learn about a particular plant, a particular ecosystem, and then we're going to go in that direction. And we're going to buy the material for that specific item that he wants to learn about. Okay, and everything's going to be fine. All right, everything's going to be fine. The science is over there. And I can tell you that with homeschooling, he doesn't need to do chemistry. He doesn't need to do calculus. He doesn't need to do trigonometry. That's not happening. That's not happening. So, that's where we're at with the homeschooling. All right, we'll leave. We'll move on. We're going to do a couple more of Lisa E's questions next time, but we're going to move on to a new person, and we're going to close out the show with a very emotional topic. My man, Vintage Toy Theater. Vintage Toy Theater says, how do you feel about divorce? Do you believe in sticking things out in an unhappy marriage when it involves children? Or do you think it's... I hope I'm not printing out emails and missing half the words, but it said, or do you think it's your siblings had a hard time? I think I probably missed a lot of this question, but do you believe in sticking things out in an unhappy marriage when it involves children? Or do you, I assume he's saying, do you think it's best to just, cut it off when it's an unhealthy marriage? You and your siblings had a hard time dealing with your own parents' divorce, or did you and your siblings have a hard time dealing with your own parents' divorce when you were younger? So I'm curious about what you do. Yeah, I cut off your question. I'm sorry, man. But I think I'll answer it according to, I think I know what you're asking me. So that's Vintage Toy Theater, and we'll end the show with this big, I gotta be careful here. I gotta, I can't say too much. I don't have an answer to the, is it better to get divorced if you're in an unhappy marriage and there's children involved, is it better to get divorced and salvage the children's experience, or is it better to stay together and salvage the children's experience? I don't have an answer to that. I think it's very individual. I don't think there's a universal answer for it. I think there's opinions, and I can see arguments for both opinions. I'm also living it, so I cannot have a solid answer for that. The divorce of my parents. So I personally think that the divorce of my parents messed up our lives. It definitely put us in different directions than we were going to go in. And I've gotten into that before. And I always have to pull myself back a little bit, because I can't sit here today and say I wish my parents had never gotten a divorce. Because if I say I wish my parents had never gotten a divorce and they didn't, my children would not exist today. They wouldn't. Liam and Finley would not exist today. So-and-so and so-and-so would exist today. Or maybe more, or maybe less, but Liam and Finley wouldn't. Because the way things happened because of the divorce. All right? I wouldn't have met the children's mother. I wouldn't have. So, well, how's that connected? Well, extremely connected. They're extremely connected. The way that things played out post-divorce put me at a community college, semester 1, drop out, go back for semester 2. That might actually be a hurricane. Go back for semester 2, meet their mother. Wouldn't have happened. Guaranteed. Regardless of the status of the relationship, that wouldn't have happened. So I can't sit around and wish that my parents stayed together, because I wouldn't know my children today. And that's unacceptable. But it did mess us up. It messed us up. It messed everything up. It changed the dynamics of the family. And you might understand, you might hear my answer to that question in this answer. You might hear my answer. Is it better to stay together? Is it better to separate? You might hear my answer without me even saying it. So my parents get divorced. We're all living with my mother, okay, as kids did in 1985. It's Christmas of 1985. My parents get divorced. I'm in 6th grade at St. Pius. I'm able to play out that year. I'm in 6th grade Christmas time, 6th grade. I'm not able to play out that year. I leave school in the middle of 6th grade. I leave the safe confines of a Catholic school, best friends with everybody. I leave that school and I'm put into a public school in a massive school district. Massive school district in 6th grade. Taken out of 6th grade, the innocence, the completely inexperienced mind, I'm plucked out of that environment and I'm put into one of the biggest districts in Monroe County, the biggest districts in Rochester, New York, and I'm put there. That's issue number 1. And that was a disaster. That was an absolute disaster. Issue number 2, we all lived in different places. We lived with my mother for a period of time. Around the age of, 12 or 13, my one sister went to live with my dad. That led to her completing a couple of years of high school and then dropping out. My second sister lived with my dad. Both sisters traded back and forth between my mom and my dad. Long story short, both sisters dropped out of high school as a result of flip-flopping between parents, and parents not really caring. Parents having more interest in their lives than their children's lives. I can't fault them 100% for that. They were young. They were very young, and they wanted to rebuild their lives that just ended with divorce. They wanted to find new people. They wanted to get married. In my mom's case, she wanted to have more children. And everybody just kind of was able to do their own thing. My grandparents saw that happening and they plucked me out. They took me out and they put me with them and they raised me. And it was proper. My sisters were both involved with drugs. They were both school dropouts. They both got involved early with guys and relied a lot on relationships for happiness. As they got older, they relied on relationships for financials, being sustained financially. Neither one of them have had a career. They all worked odd jobs and they all parented children. Not that there's anything wrong with that, but it wasn't for the right reasons. It was because they had no experience, they had no college, they had no work history, they had no skills, they didn't have a high school degree. Unfortunately, the drugs became a massive problem in both of their lives, and one of them died as a result. And the other one probably should have. Thankfully, she's not dead, and she's very clean today, and she's finally found herself a career and a life. And I'm happy for her, but she is still behind the 8 ball. Still. Just because of history. So, was their downfall the direct result of divorce? I will think so until I'm done. I will always think so. I will always blame my parents' divorce for the results of my sisters. I will always blame my parents' divorce for me having to be taken away from my mother and father, basically, and put with my grandparents. So that's not blame, I guess, but that's a result of. I wouldn't have lived with my grandparents had my parents stayed married. I wouldn't have had to. Now, living with my grandparents was the absolute best thing that could have ever happened to me. But I wouldn't have had to if my parents had stayed together. I sit here today and think that my sister would be alive if my parents didn't get divorced. My opinion, folks. My opinion. So, with that being said, I think that when you make a choice to have children, I think when I make a choice to have children, I'm not going to say you at all. I'm not going to say you at all, because there are probably watching this. There are probably people watching this channel who are divorced, and you think I'm attacking. I'm not. When I make a decision to have children, I am going to stay with those children. I am going to help raise those children. I am going to be in the same home as those children until they don't need that anymore. And that age is debatable. Okay, is it 16? Is it 18? Is it 20? I don't know. I guess I'll find out. But I'm not leaving the children until they don't need me anymore. So I guess those are my thoughts on divorce. I will make it look as good as I possibly can because I won't leave those children. And I won't let them, I just won't. Now, there's a lot that goes into that. The children are homeschooled. And whether you agree with homeschooling or not, that's your opinion. That's your opinion. If you agree with homeschooling or not, that's your opinion. But the children have been homeschooled their entire lives. Changing the family dynamic would put those children into school. Some of you might be saying, that's a good thing. My dad would be saying, that'll be great. They'll be fine. It's great. That's great. Great opinion. My opinion is that it would be total culture shock. And I'm sorry, but we are not good people today. School systems are a mess. Children are a mess. If you happen to have wonderful children, I couldn't be happier. You're doing a great job. But remember the field that I work in, and remember the stuff I see. Remember the stories I hear. And my children have been immune to that, sheltered from that their whole lives. Does that mean they're going to struggle when they're 18 and they go out into the real world and they get yelled at or they get told what to do? No, they'll be fine. They'll be fine. But I'm just not going to let anything toxify their minds at the age of 11 and 7. I don't need them to know. I don't need them to know what a lot of 11-year-old and 7-year-olds know today. They don't need to. Why do they need to? You know? It'll happen. Don't worry. They'll be exposed to stuff. They'll be exposed to stuff, and we'll deal with it when they're exposed to stuff. But I don't need it part of their curriculum. I don't need them to be exposed to it just because. So I guess those are my feelings on divorce. I will not leave my children until they are at an age where they don't need parents together 24/7. And then different talks will be had and different decisions will be made. Whew-wee. Well, that's the Power Hour, folks. All right, that's that. So Lisa's question is of how things are going at home. We're just going to say see previous question. We've got more questions from Lisa E. We've got questions from a man, Perry. The Rad Zone is asking questions. We got questions from a man, Collectors Entertainment Network. He also wants to know how many licks does it take to get to the center of a Tootsie Pop. It's going to get emotional. Upstate Johnny has more questions. My man Stephen Brown asked a very, very serious question that we will address next time. And that's the Power Hour. If you want to get your questions in, jasonnup76@gmail.com, TN80R questions@gmail.com, and hit me up on the Facebook for ask me your questions there. That is all. Whew. I got to take a shower after this one. Good night, folks.